Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? What is your favorite classic movie? Casablanca, Citizen Kane, The Grapes of Wrath, Mutiny on the Bounty, It's a Wonderful Life. You remember when going to the theater was an experience? There is a place nestled on the campus of Trinity College in Hartford where movie magic is still being made. If you love going to the movies, if you love movies, period, this is your show. My guest tonight is James Handley. For the past 48 years, he has been a guiding force in helping to keep the magic alive. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you, Jim.
Pleasure
to be here.
48 years and counting.
I know. Well, I wasn't really counting, but it sort of snuck up on me.
All righty. Okay.
I guess I was having fun.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were. What I said in the intro was it's movie magic. It is, man.
Yeah, right.
It is.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into some of that magic tonight, all right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Would you please tell our viewing audience about the history of Cinestudio and your involvement with it?
Well, I came to Trinity in 1968. I actually was there a little bit before that. And I was there as a student. I had originally planned on, I was actually going to go to school at UCLA for film production and possibly directing. I was really a fanatic about movies ever since I was a small child. And I was taken to see This Is Cinerama when I was 7 years old, and I never looked back. So as it happened, I got a scholarship to Trinity, and when I came to Trinity, I wanted to be a part of the Film Society, which I joined, and we were showing movies all around campus, mostly in 16 millimeter, well, all in 16 millimeter actually. There was no video, and there was no other way to do it. So we showed these films in various rooms around the campus, and we got good audiences, but we were always being moved because there were other events. And so one time late at night, we walked around the campus and we found the auditorium that became Cinestudio in the chemistry building. And we asked the head of the chemistry department if we could show movies in there. And he was busy, I think, inventing and doing his research.
Doing his thing,
and he
yeah.
basically said, yes, of course, get out of my office.
Just get out of my way.
Right. So anyway, late that night, we had looked at the plans of the building and we found a door we thought was the projection booth for the theater. Nobody had a key. So we took off the hinges at dead of night and got in there and found 35 millimeter projectors that had been put in when the building was constructed in 1935, and they had just at that moment, the people who had designed the building thought that instructional audio video was going to become a thing, and the only way they could do it was with 35 millimeter film. But interestingly, that didn't work out for a number of reasons, one of which was the auditorium at the time had very poor acoustics. But also, they had thought that large numbers of students, maybe 300 or 400 students, would sit and watch a chemistry experiment demonstrated at the front of the auditorium. That turned out not to be the case. They wanted students to make their own experiments, and so the auditorium was not being used very much for those reasons. And so we came in and we saw those. I think when we saw those 35 millimeter projectors, we thought, wow, at last we can show movies to a professional standard.
Sure.
And so we actually immediately set about planning to put in a bigger screen. The screen, one of the funny stories is that when we went into the auditorium, the screen was a tiny screen way up high on the wall, and the painters had painted the screen along with the wall. So it just, it was like, okay, it didn't matter kind of thing. So we had to, we with the help of a faculty advisor, we borrowed from him about $3,000, which paid for a new screen, and also a man to come up from National Theater Service in Hamden to come up and help us get the projectors running. And so we managed to do that. We got everything ready. We were planning to open in 1969 in the winter. And then the difficulty was we wanted to show films directly from the distributors as a theater. We were going to run every night. This was something unheard of on a college campus. And so we tried to get the distributors to rent us films, and none of them would do it. But one man from United Artists decided he was curious. He came down from Boston. We treated him to lunch at the Friendlies on the corner of Broad and Vernon, which the building is still there. But anyway, he came, he listened to us, and I think that he'd viewed us as a bunch of, sort of a dozen hippies who just wanted to show movies, and he was kind of tolerating us. But then we asked him at the end, so we said we wanted to show a double feature of Yellow Submarine at Alice's Restaurant, which nobody else had done.
Yes.
And he laughed, and he thought, I'm not going to go out on a limb like that. And so I remember asking him, so how much would it cost? Meaning, clearly, he's not going to do it without risk. So he asked for $500, which then was, was kind of asking a lot of a bunch of students at that point. So we asked him that, and he said, yeah, I'll do it for $500. So we raised the $500 between us, and we paid the money, and we got the double feature. We opened February 16th, 1970, and we sold out every single show for, I forget how many days, but it was quite a phenomenon. So much so that the United Artists company was talking about it. They told the other distributors, and all of a sudden the other distributors were interested in playing movies at Cinestudio. And so it took that one agreement and that one demonstration. And you have to remember, of course, there were no videos, there was no computers. This was the way you saw movies at the time. You went into a theater, and we really knew how to put on a better show. The sound was good, the picture was good, and students flocked to it, but also community members. And it was a great success right from the beginning. And it really was running as a cooperative. We were a bunch of students, we were all volunteers, we all cooperated together. And we opened with something that was memorable. And even now, to this day, I meet people who come and say, oh, I remember going to see that, or I remember going to see one of the films when you first opened. And what was really different was the quality of the presentation and the fact that they were surrounded with people who were passionate about movies. They just loved movies.
James, why is it important to keep places like this open?
Well, I think that one of the things that's important now is that entertainment has become so fragmented in many ways, and people get their film, they even see films this way. They look at them on phones, they see them on TV, they look at them in all sorts of venues, many times away from an actual sort of sense of place. And one of the things to me that I think is central to cinema as an art is the ability to see these images larger than life on a big screen, high quality images, and having very good sound, and sitting with people who you probably don't know, enjoying that journey into a story. And there are lots of elements to getting that right, but it is completely different from watching a movie at home or watching a movie on your phone. And this is an experience that I feel absolutely passionate about maintaining, so that people can have that feeling. They can know that cinema is an art on that basis.
When you walk into a Cinestudios, and you see the screen, and you see the chairs, and you step back into time. My goodness gracious. I've been there. I've had that experience.
Yeah.
It is truly an experience that took me right back to my childhood, the
Yes.
big screen days.
Yes.
It really did.
And that's something that many younger people have not had, that real experience. Most of the time, people, if they do go to theaters to see movies, they see them in a very sort of generic environment, which is mainly geared towards selling food. It's not actually cinematic. It's not a sense of showmanship. And I was lucky growing up in London and also traveling in Europe. I went to theaters where if you went to the movie, even if you didn't like the movie, you went to this wonderful auditorium planetarium. You went to this
Yes.
building, you walked up this magnificent staircase.
Yes,
And you
yes.
saw this huge curtain. I mean, I went to the Odeon Leicester Square in London where they had 4 screen curtains that would open one after another. And the excitement of seeing the images come on the screen in that environment. And memorable films, but even if they weren't, it was just that sense of being somewhere special. And I think that that's one of the things that is missing from a lot of theaters now, that it's just a matter of sort of throwing the picture on the screen, and then the screen itself doesn't have a curtain, which is a whole other story about how you create the environment.
The ambiance.
The ambiance,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes.
And that is so important.
Yes. Now, what are some of the events that are held at Cinestudios? Would you give us an overview of some of the things that go on there?
Well, we do a very wide, we see ourselves as a community resource, as well as being a place where we play films that we curate, we select as a group, and
Yes.
pick out certain films we want to show. And we also, people bring film festivals, like we've had the Real Youth Hartford Film Festival, the Trinity Film Festival, and the Hartford Gay and Lesbian, the Connecticut Lesbian and Gay Film Festival was founded at Cinestudio in 1988 and has been there ever since. Which are very important events that bring us close to the community and provide the opportunity to actually not only bring an affinity group together, but also introduce others, and to be able to show films that they might not otherwise discover. And so, like right now, we're showing Michael Moore's film Fahrenheit 11/9, which is which is an important film that everybody wanted us to show. But during the summer, for example, we showed 2001: A Space Odyssey in a 70 millimeter large format print, which was actually a photochemical print, which is very rare these days. Most new prints of films are derived from digital scans. This one, it was actually Christopher Nolan, the filmmaker, wanted to make a print from the original negative, which he did, and we showed that. We had previously shown the digital restoration, but this gave the fans an opportunity to see what do we mean when we show film. Why do we still have our film projectors when everybody else has hauled them to the dump?
Right.
We actually still have them operational, and we can actually show what is different there. And in fact, it's an important statement about the art, that the art of cinema is kind of diverging. There's the art of cinema which has become digital and has a certain look to it, but there's also the old style, if you like, of filmmaking, which was on physical film. However, an increasing number of directors now are originating films on physical film, then converting them to digital, but they like to film on film. So this is an example of sort of celebrating the intricacies of the art, which are really central to them. And I think Cinestudios' function in the community is as a resource to show this revered art and to show cinema the way it was intended to be shown, and not just sort of thrown up on the screen and, you know, who cares if it's in focus or if the light is right or anything like that. We really care about that, and so we really make sure that the sound is indeed, our slogan is that we have legendary sound. We really do pay attention to that in constant detail, and we pay attention to the quality of the experience people have when they sit to watch a movie.
You know, how have you lasted so long, James?
Well, I happen to be a person who, I mean, I have fun, number one, and I really feel Cinestudio kind of happened to me in the sense that I was going to school and I thought I was interested in films and I wanted to make films, but I started to realize, I went to certain theaters, like one memorable experience was seeing Cinerama and seeing theaters in different places I went. I felt very moved by the experience of getting the actual exhibition of films right, because so many times you'd have great filmmakers would make a wonderful film, and it would be a horrible experience in the theater because somebody didn't care about whether it was in focus, or they didn't care if the print was clean or something like that. And worse still, to me, one of the greatest insults of modern cinema theaters is not having a curtain. I think having the curtain, the opening of the curtain and the closing of it at the end, is really integral to that experience of the art. And all of those things moved me, and I think I long ago, working at Cinestudio, you're not working, like 40 hours a week. It sometimes ends up 60 or 70.
Yeah.
But you have fun doing it. I feel dedicated. I love to meet the audience. I love to talk to people about what they've seen. And I also love to pass on the knowledge, too, to be able to pass on the enthusiasm and the passion I have for it, and hope that it continues as a resource in the city. Because it is unique. There's nothing like it anywhere. It's something very special that Hartford has. And I think its linkage with Trinity is very important. And all of that is a sort of ethos that has built up over the years that I look back and, sure, I had to be there long, long hours sometimes. I mean, even last weekend, I was up until 2 o'clock in the morning fixing a problem. But I've never regretted it, and I still have fun doing it.
How do you raise the funds that you need in order to keep operating?
Well, that has become an issue of really the theater becoming not only a place of exhibition of films, but for people to see as a resource that they support. So people become friends of Cinestudio, they make contributions. We've had contributions, we've made a strong application to the Hartford Foundation, for example, when we had to convert to digital cinema. This happened very, very quickly, and the industry had a system to deal with the vast number of large theater chains, but for small theaters and independent art houses, there was nothing. And so we were faced with the prospect of not being able to get prints of films within 6 months. So we had to really move quickly, and we were able to make the argument that this was really important, that Hartford had this resource, and that we were going to keep film equipment, but that we needed to have digital equipment to do our day-to-day business of showing films. And we put in a digital system, for example, which wasn't purely commercial. Before anybody thought of it, most digital films come with a security key that comes from the studio, but we also felt it was very important to have an open system that local filmmakers, for example, who couldn't afford the security systems to put on their films, they could just come in and we could convert them and we could put them into the system and show them on the big screen, which we've done. And so when filmmakers come to a festival, they have that resource. When 12-year-old kids make a 10-minute movie on a cell phone in a competition in the city, they can come and they can see it on the big screen, they can invite their family, they can have that experience. Maybe somebody gets moved the way I did when my babysitter took me to Cinerama.
Yeah. Now, family-friendly ticket prices, parking, Hartford. Talk to me about that.
Well, in terms of ticket prices, we're on the low end of the commercial theater ticket price. We don't sell food, so we rely totally on the ticket price. So for most people, it is affordable, but we do provide certain reductions, like for students, and also there are reductions for seniors, and also people who become friends of Cinestudio who make contributions. It's really something that many times, like for example, if you want, we have coming up, we're bringing in a 70mm print of Interstellar, the Christopher Nolan film, which we've shown before, but is very important, we think, to bring back. Now, a 70mm print, it's stored on the West Coast, so immediately you have to think, okay, you've got to ship it from the West Coast and back to the West Coast. So the costs of that are very high. Now, we charge a higher ticket price for that, but we also raise money to support it. It's absolutely essential to do that.
Yes.
Many people feel in the art house business now that the true ticket price, the cost of running these shows would be about $30 a ticket, and obviously you can't really compete in the local market at that level. So you raise the money to support that operation.
Sure.
And one of the interesting things, about that is becoming apparent now is that I think Hartford is undergoing a change in its relationship with the suburbs and a change in its whole sense. There are more people living in the city. There's more of a sense of the excitement of the cultural diversity of the city. And I think that is something that, in the past, people would think, well, why should we come in from Granby or West Hartford and come to see a movie in Hartford? We always hear bad things about Hartford.
That was my next point, the stigma.
And I think that there was a period when that was the case. I mean, I would answer the phone and be reassuring people, yes, it's okay, and yes, you could park anywhere. And sometimes there's a lot of people trying to park in the small area. However, when we're showing our films, the parking across the entire campus is available, and people don't have to worry about restriction signs, and so they're able to find parking. And they also, people are telling us now they realize they've discovered something special. There are people who are realizing that they not only can come in and see a movie at Cinestudio, but there are some amazing restaurants around.
Absolutely.
That Hartford is not what they've thought it was.
Portrayed to be.
It was portrayed to be a dangerous place.
Absolutely. That's the stigma that we talk about.
To come in, exactly.
Exactly, yes.
And I think that it's taken years to get to a point where...
So you got to reassure me here. Are you telling me and the viewing audience that you think the stigma that's attached to Hartford in general is somewhat lessening as more people come into the city and take advantage of the culture that Hartford actually has? Right,
no question. And I think it's not just a matter of, sort of like darting in and darting out, like coming in to see the Bushnell show or coming in to see a show at Cinestudio. They're actually interested in finding some of the fascinating restaurants nearby or going downtown and seeing other things. And I think that there are a lot of reasons for this, but people have talked about it for years. My husband, for example, teaches civil engineering, transportation at the University of Connecticut, and one of the fascinating things about Hartford is that over many years it was allowed to be completely overcome with parking, surface parking lots, which is an indication of how little people value the land. Mm-hmm. Instead of putting up buildings and restaurants and concert halls and stuff, that's putting parking there. Yeah. Yet, what's the first thing that people say? There's nowhere to park.
That's right,
and it's completely not true. These are myths that direct. Like the myths are about it's dangerous to come into the city, you can't park, or there's something wrong like that. And I think that you have new generations, at least 2 new generations coming up now, who are not thinking that way. And I feel very hopeful for the city like that. They revel in the cultural diversity. They're actually looking for things that are different. They're not looking for reassuring things. They're actually coming to have an adventure, to see a movie they love, and maybe go to a restaurant which is serving food they're not familiar with. And that is a change that I've witnessed I'd say that change started to be positive in the last 20 years, but it's very slow. But I think we've gotten to a point now where it's definitely apparent.
Well, you get a baseball stadium in downtown now.
That's right, yes.
Absolutely, and it's quite a lovely stadium.
Yes, yeah.
And of course the name of the team gives someone pause.
Right, well, I think that's great,
The Goats, but okay, all right, we'll roll with that.
Yeah,
we'll give the Hartford Goats a shout out.
Exactly, and I think that, young people are responding to the city in a different way, dealing with stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first came to Hartford, you went downtown to go to maybe G. Fox or go to
Woolworth,
or go to any number of the things that were sort of part of the downtown. And
yes.
Of course, that's not part of the city anymore. It's a different feel for it. So the city is now developing in different ways. Yukon has made a huge revolution in being downtown. The student presence downtown.
Absolutely, yeah.
The people who go to the Athenaeum and they go to the Yukon campus, and the Yukon campus has events, and then there's the Infinity Music Hall, and all of those things that you're seeing people on the street, and you're getting people curious, and they see those things, and then maybe they find out about Cinestudio as well, which is a unique resource that doesn't exist anywhere else in the country.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it's something, our job is to get that word out.
Okay. What is your vision for Cinestudio in the next 48, 50?
Well, that's going to be other people having a vision. My feeling about it is that Cinestudio becomes what it's started to be, really, an institution of cinema, a celebration of the art of cinema, which is a resource that people appreciate in the city. Whether it shows what kinds of films, how it shows, and how it operates, that's going to be something for future people who are involved. My concern is that as what happens so often with projects of founders is that when the founders retire or pass on,
the projects go with them.
The project goes with them.
Yep.
And I think it's absolutely essential that that Cinestudio be reborn in a new form, in a sense,
renaissance,
a renaissance, which is what is there, but taken in the vision of others who love it. And I think we have those people around. People who really care and who really want this to happen. And so I have no qualms about that being sort of, like my inspiration can be to another generation of people to say, that's not the end of Cinestudio, this is the beginning of something new.
How do people get on your mailing list to get your wonderful movie mailer there?
Well, the easiest way, if you're on a computer, you can go on our website, cinestudio.org, and you can sign up for the mailing list, and you can find out more about Cinestudio, and you find out about the program. You can also come to a movie at Cinestudio, and there are forms you can fill out.
Okay.
And some people have discovered over the years, quite a lot of people really, that they can also come, and if they're really, really dedicated, they can come and work one shift a week. And if they work one shift a week as a volunteer, they can come and see all these movies for free. And so we have that option open also. But you can get the mailing list, you can get a physical flyer mailed to you. But if you prefer, we get a lot of people now who say they don't want the paper, but they'd like to have the weekly email. So you can get on the email list, and we send you out an email with all the latest programming.
This has been a pleasure. You got to come back again, James.
I'd love to.
That's all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, James Handley. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, good night.